Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. More calls for tighter COVID-19 restrictions as cases continue to rise. Why vendors in Brownstown, St. Ann are fearful. And later in sports, 2 Jamaicans named in West Indies test squad for Pakistan series. I am Vashan Brown and here are the details. As COVID-19 admissions continue to soar, the Medical Association of Jamaica, MAJ, is urging the government to take the advice of medical experts and act now. Speaking on Power 106 this morning, President of the MAJ, Dr. Andrew Manning, said tighter restrictions are needed to save lives and curb the spread of COVID-19. Sandy Williams reports.
A third wave of the COVID-19 infection has resulted in an increase in bed occupancy at all major hospitals across the island and has also revived old problems, limited oxygen and healthcare workers. Dr. Mindy Fitz-Henley is the president of the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association.
Unfortunately, we're having issues already like we did in the past. Things like running out of oxygen and there just being no ICU bed space for any COVID-19 patients. When there is an issue with an overabundance of COVID-19 patients, it affects the other patients, the persons coming in with asthma attacks, mothers who need to have emergency C-sections, car accident victims. All of those things can also be affected. And unfortunately, this was what we had predicted could happen if things did not improve. And unfortunately, we're here.
And the president of the Medical Association of Jamaica, Dr. Andrew Manning, believes the situation could become much worse than in March when there was the second wave of the virus.
We're higher up on the curve in terms of the level of transmission within community, the numbers of cases, etc. We are starting from a lower point before in March. That's what the epidemiologists had advised us, and that's where we are now. Because you're going to have increasing numbers of persons turning up to hospital who really need to be admitted, who won't be admitted. You're going to have more persons dying. So these are some of the things that the policymakers need to take into account when they're thinking about easing restrictions. We are cognizant of the need to restart the economy, but we will not be able to restart the economy at any significant level until we see the back of COVID.
He says the government needs to listen to the medical experts and impose tighter restrictions now to limit the spread of COVID-19 and save lives.
We need to have tighter restrictions now to try and bring this down under control. A positivity rate of over 30% is staggeringly high. We need to push and not ease the restrictions until we get the positivity rate down to 5% or less and maintain it for at least 2 weeks.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
And Jamaica recorded 281 new cases of the coronavirus within the last 24 hours from 1,360 samples. The overall case count now stands at 55,140. The positivity rate is 30.3%. 9 new deaths were recorded. The ages range from 57 to 97 years. They include 6 people from the corporate area, 2 from St. Elizabeth, and 1 woman from St. Ann. The death toll is now 1,231. In the meantime, the number of patients hospitalized with the respiratory illness is 270, while 34 are critically ill. There are now 6,272 active cases of COVID-19 in Jamaica. The overall case count now stands at 55,140, as I mentioned earlier on. And the rise in COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations has triggered a series of responses from the Ministry of Health. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dunson Bryan, says the country is on red alert as majority of the Type A hospitals have no more beds for COVID-19 patients. He says in addition to doctors on the western end of the island who were forced to cut their vacation short to deal with the increasing patient load, the Permanent Secretary says a couple field hospitals are now being utilized again to meet the demand.
The field hospital that is in Spanish Town, we had to do some repairs on that, and so it will be back in operation on Tuesday. The field hospital, we are constructing a field hospital in the southern region at the Maypen Hospital, and that is slated to come to an end in terms of construction. Will come to an end at the end of August. We have received around 75 new beds, and those beds are in storage and will be deployed this week.
Of course, that is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dunson Bryan. Now, there have been days of protests in the Caribbean about mandatory vaccination, and at least one academic believes Jamaica could see similar protests if mandatory vaccination policies are implemented locally. Here's Codian Barrett.
Unrest in the Caribbean by protesters against mandatory COVID-19 vaccination and some of the measures aimed at limiting the spread of COVID-19. The latest protest took place in Antigua on Sunday against vaccination policies. That was cut short after police sent tear gas into the crowd. Senior lecturer at the University of the West Indies Department of Government, Dr. Christopher Charles, believes the wave of protest now sweeping across the Caribbean is happening for several reasons.
Fear, uncertainty, distrust of government. The medical establishment in the global north, run by whites, have used the medical establishment to harm blacks in the past. So blacks, non-whites all around the world are very fearful.
Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, was injured after a protester threw a rock at his head during a demonstration in the Eastern Caribbean island late last week. Dr. Charles says misinformation is the root cause of these kinds of developments now plaguing the region.
Then you have the anti-vaxxers who have their own understanding and their own ideology and worldview about what vaccination is and is not. So it's a mix of reasons.
The UWI lecturer says Jamaica could be in for its share of protest if a similar approach is taken by the government.
So if they rise up, the army and the police will have their hands full. So I don't think it will be the entire Jamaica, but largely urban centers, and it will be very difficult to contain.
Codian Barrett, TVJ News.
Now, one of the questions now being asked is what is the implication of the surge in cases locally on plans for the resumption of face-to-face classes next month? Well, O'Shane Masters has been speaking to education stakeholders and now joins us live. O'Shane?
Thanks, Vashan. As cases of COVID-19 and hospitalizations continue to surge, concern is growing as to the way forward for face-to-face classes. At the end of last month, Prime Minister Andrew Holness tightened the measures under the Disaster Risk Management Act, DRMA, as the country began to see an uptick in cases. He said that the government took the decision in a bid to have face-to-face classes resume come September. But as the cases continue to spiral out of control with close to 300 persons hospitalized, that hope seems to be falling by the way. JTA President Jaswat Gabriel says an outright directive is needed from Education Minister Favour Williams as to the prospects of face-to-face classes, with classes set to resume in a month.
It's going to be difficult for the Ministry of Education. The last positivity rate I saw was in excess of 30%. That's quite alarming. You're looking at what's happening with hospitals across the country, oversubscribed, maxing out, and so these are clearly alarm bells. And, once face-to-face resume, you're talking about in excess of possibly 600,000 students with the possibility of rolling out, though you might do it in cycles. And so the Ministry of Education obviously is not in a position to say anything definitively right now because, the health risks and the associated effects from that. Of course, all stakeholders would love to get something definitive, but we also understand the unpredictable nature of the virus. We are treating it right.
Now, opposition spokesperson on education, Dr. Angela Brown-Burke, says despite the rise in COVID-19 cases, face-to-face classes should be allowed. She says this should be done due to significant learning loss last year. Now, according to the Education Ministry, an estimated 120,000 students did not attend school since March 2020. Dr. Brown-Burke says what's needed now is consultation with stakeholders, including parents and teachers. She's also calling for the Education Ministry to speak to schools to see how some of them carried out their operations last year, even when they were told to close.
I believe that there are institutions who were coping last year, who found ways of making it happen. And so what I think needs to happen is that the time needs to be taken to have the discussion with the teachers and our education leaders to say, okay, what we did last year, how do we replicate that if it was working? If what you did was not working, what do we change?
But Mr. Gabriel believes that with the threat of the Delta variant and the increase in cases, online learning at this time is the best option. And we'll continue to look at the impacts the virus will have on the education sector and learning as we get closer to the start of the new academic year. For now, it's back to you, Vashan.
All right, thank you so much, Oshane, for that comprehensive report. And with that, we now go to a break. But please stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Vendors who use the Brownstown Market in St. Anne are fearful for their lives. The vendors complained to TVJ News that with the new renovations done to the market recently, they have to be sleeping outside the area to protect their goods. But Mayor of St. Anne's Bay, Sidney Stewart, says it's the first time he's learning about this and that a place is being constructed for the vendors. Shamela Pullen reports.
The past few weeks at the Brownstown Market in St. Anne have been a nightmare for some vendors.
This is the house. We go under here, under here. You can see underneath the house. And here's where we go. This is the doorway.
Yeah. Sometimes what?
Sometimes when the rain comes down on us, we have to lie down in the same way and get the wet same way, but we have nowhere to go.
Mr. Campbell is just one of the 40 vendors who sells in the market and needs a place to stay, as many of them travel from as far as St. Elizabeth, Manchester and Clarendon to sell their goods.
Come at Brownstown as Tuesday morning, after 2 we reach at the market. We don't go home till Thursday evening, 6 o'clock. At the market, from Tuesday night until Thursday evening is here our bed. Yes, so we sleep.
Years gone by, the vendors were able to find a resting place at nights inside the market close to their goods. But since the market was renovated a few weeks ago, new rules, they can't stay inside there anymore. This is now becoming dangerous for them.
Risky we running for. We sell half our money what we sell at the market. And have it my way. Anything can possibly happen.
The time is getting stiffer and you don't know when people might come in and choke down some people outside, like the person them who's selling sleeping there or van and their buses. And we, my dear, so and maybe there's things that we see and come kill we. It's very risky. But we only ask God to protect us.
Mayor of St. Anne's Bay, Sidney Stewart, says he's surprised at the disclosure. Mayor Stewart said he had a meeting with officials in the market and was never told about this situation. But he said he has since asked for the names and contact information for the vendors so the municipal corporation can communicate with them directly and make preparations for them.
But at the moment, we are really preparing an area that I think is adequate to accommodate them when we look at the number, the figure of 40 people. I hear now that accommodation is required for them to get some rest overnight because they come to know that or they're coming from very far. So I will ask our chief engineering officer and the CEO and the director of finance to let us take a look at that and look at what the market law is saying and see where we can accommodate them. Because whatever happens, I think I cherish them and I want them to be comfortable.
Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
The woman who appealed for help to undergo an eye surgery has received donations and is scheduled to do the procedure this week. Sandy Williams has this follow-up.
Since TVJ News highlighted Kishona Watkins' story of her medical condition in May, people have been reaching out to the 21-year-old. They donated funds via various organizations, including the Jamaica Pentecostal Church of God in St. Catherine.
As a pastor, I really believe in giving and helping people. And I'm not one who believes that the church should store millions in the account and persons are in need of help and we don't help them. I believe that the church should give back to persons, whether they are saved or not.
Thanks to the donors out there who have seen my story and have reached out to me in every single way that they can. Those who didn't get to donate, they send their prayers, their love, and trust me, it has been a good journey.
While grateful, Kishona says she's most excited about being able to do the surgery, which is expected to save her sight.
When I look and see that I am going in surgery, and we did the interview, and we raised the money in less than 2 months, oh God, it's just feel overwhelming. Trust me, it's been a good one. You know, when I just want something to get over with and to come back on track, to finish your studies and to contribute back to society.
Kishona was diagnosed with corneal eye drops in her right eye last December. It is a complication of advanced thinning and bulging of the cornea, the transparent part of the eye, which gradually becomes cloudy, leading to a sudden and painful decrease in visual sharpness. Kishona is scheduled to undergo a cornea transplant on Thursday, August 12 in Kingston.
Going into surgery, I have faith. I believe that it's going to be a successful one. To come back and share my story, how it was, and you know, it's going to be alright. It's going to be okay.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
At least one Jamaica Labour Party representative in Westmoreland has sought to explain why he was absent from the unveiling of the Westmoreland Municipal Corporation building last week. Member of Parliament for Westmoreland Western, Moreland Wilson, says attending the ceremony would mean supporting the inefficiencies. More in this report.
On the defensive, Member of Parliament for Westmoreland Western, when asked about his absence from the unveiling of the Westmoreland Municipal Corporation building recently.
We would be supporting inefficiencies by having such a building being named. And to add insult to injury, we have a municipal corporation which has failed in pretty much all of its projects.
Despite the pushback from the Jamaica Labour Party councillors, local government Minister Desmond McKenzie, and now the MP, the mayor is unbothered.
There's absolutely no reason given in this letter. So I wrote back to them and tell them that we will be going forward. They don't have the right to name anything. We as a local authority.
Going ahead and opening a building and naming it of the current councillor and mayor, I think is highly inappropriate, and it's not within good taste at this particular moment.
So the building has been named, and it's not clear what will be the government's next move. However, the MP is calling for the mayor to address several concerns.
We have several issues around parking in terms of the location. We have issues that staff members...
And we do apologize for the abrupt end to that report. We go now to the latest in the world of business. Here is Cody and Barrett with the Business Minute.
The Business Minute, brought to you by...
And it's now time for your top regional and international stories. Here's O'Shane Masters.
In news from the region, the Bermuda government is appealing to its citizens to get vaccinated as active coronavirus cases in the island jumped to 71 after 46 new cases were reported in the first week of August. Of the active cases, 61 have been confirmed as a highly contagious Delta variant that has been blamed for a surge of cases internationally. 14 of the active cases are children aged 10 or under and too young to be vaccinated. Former Prime Minister of Antigua, Lester Bird, died early on Monday after a prolonged battle with illness. Mr. Bird, who began his political career in 1971 when he was nominated to the Senate, served as the island's second Prime Minister from 1994 to 2004. In news overseas, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's top aide Melissa DeRosa resigned late Sunday, less than a week after the release of a report from the State Attorney General that found Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women. DeRosa's resignation comes on the eve of a meeting of the State Assembly's Judiciary Committee that could deliver a timeline for Cuomo's potential impeachment. The report detailed a toxic workplace environment under Cuomo and said that environment allowed for his allegedly harassing behavior to go overlooked. And that's it for your midday roundup. I'm O'Shane Masters.
To a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have your midday sports report, and Renato Brown is standing by.
Welcome back, and it's now time for your midday sports. I'm Renato Brown.
Now, Jamaicans Nkrumah Bonner and Vice-Captain Jermaine Blackwood have been included in the West Indies 17-member squad to face Pakistan in a two-test series in Jamaica starting on Thursday. Bonner returns to the squad after suffering a concussion in the first test against South Africa in June in St. Lucia. There is, however, no place in the squad for fast bowler Shannon Gabriel and middle-order batsman Darren Bravo. West Indies lead selector Roger Harper says Gabriel is being given time to fully rehab and build his conditioning, while Bravo has been given a break. The full squad reads skipper Craig Brathwaite, vice-captain Jermaine Blackwood, Nkrumah Bonner, Shamar Brooks, Rakeem Cornwall, Roston Chase, Joshua Da Silva, Jamar Hamilton, Shamar Holder, Jason Holder, Shea Hope, Azari Joseph, Kyle Mears, Karen Powell, Kemar Roach, Jaden Seals, and Jamel Warkan. The first test goes off on Thursday at Savannah Park. The second test goes off on August 20 at the same venue. Early in the tour, Pakistan won the rain-affected 4-match T20 series 1-0. And Veer United will be looking to move to the top of the Jamaica Premier League table as they face Arnett Gardens at the Captain Horace Centre of Excellence this afternoon. Veer are second in the table on 11 points, while leaders Portmore United have 13 points. Arnett Gardens are 10th on 4 points. Kickoff is at 3:30. At 1 o'clock, Waterhouse, who are 8th, and Cavalier, who are 7th, will do battle at the same venue. A former reggae boy, Giles Barnes, has retired from professional football. Barnes retires at the age of 33 after struggling to overcome a knee injury, which he sustained in the Indian Super League with Hyderabad in 2020. Barnes made 19 appearances for the Reggae Boys and scored 3 goals in the process. He was a member of Jamaica's squad that finished second at the 2015 edition of the CONCACAF Gold Cup. The former Fulham and Derby County attacker will now be working on his coaching qualifications at the level 1 with the English FA. And that's it for your Midday Sports Report. Vashon, it's back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Ronaldo. And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashon Brown. Join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, have a wonderful afternoon and have a great week.